From the front lines of the military to the front lines of business, this is Military to Management. I'm your host, Eamon. Each episode, we uncover how veterans are translating discipline, leadership, and mission-first values into success in today's corporate world. Hey, Mark, welcome back to part 2 of our recording session. Appreciate you being able to hop back on and finish this off. We left off with you talking about Amazon, what you liked about how you transitioned into Amazon, what you didn't like about it. Can you kind of share with everyone how your career progressed from Amazon to where you are currently in your career?
Yeah. So there was a couple of steps from Amazon to where I'm at now, where I'm genuinely pleased with the work that I'm doing now. Left Amazon, I think we left off, I just kind of talking about how corporate, and Amazon's not unique in the fact that, you terminate a percentage of your employees every year to try and keep the best talent. And, that was just my first exposure to it was at Amazon, but, apparently that's not uncommon. So anyway, after leaving there, I swung the other way and started doing real estate. So kind of your own business and selling. Plus there was some personal circumstances. I needed the flexibility, taking care of, an elderly relative and that. So, did that for a while, sort of enjoyed it. First time not having a steady paycheck, which was a little unnerving, but, it eventually got back into IT where I was helping, pretty large pool company run their e-commerce and customer care and stuff. So started getting back into the IT thing, which I did enjoy that. That's, was my background in the Marine Corps. That was my education. So started getting back into that a little more. I mean, it was, I can't say more organized, but it felt better. And the pay was low though. So I felt like I was kind of starting over. Did that for a bit, still, struggled just finding my niche, just, really, it's like, this is cool. And, I get to have a team and kind of do those things that, we enjoyed in the military, but, really wasn't hitting the mark in terms of like personal and professional satisfaction. So I was constantly searching, right? I would be that guy on LinkedIn, always looking for the next best thing. And, eventually just keeping in touch with some old buddies and things, having those conversations, I was able to, connect with a, guy I'd served with forever, really. And he worked for the state of California and ran their emergency communications, division. And, we had a similar background, and he's like, you should think about, working in 911. I was like, I mean, that's a phone call. That doesn't really sound very challenging. How hard can that be? That was truly ignorant speaking, because 911 is deeply technical, it's extremely challenging. So anyway, he introduced me to a couple of folks. I landed a job, working for a, 911 core services implementation company, and fell in love with it, right? It was, back serving. I'm working with first responders. It's funny to see how everything kind of went full circle, because when I left the Marine Corps, I intentionally tried not to do a job that was aligned with the Marine Corps. I think you remember I sort of talked about, a lot of folks get that smooth transition and go to a government contractor. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Well, here I am now doing something that was very, very similar. And like I said, working with the first responders, fire and police agencies, the dispatch centers, and the technology that supports all that. So to me, I was like, this is it, right? I found my love, right? And the money was good too. So, and I could see a path that was, there was definitely growth, and there's lots to do. It's going to be around for a long time, and there's plenty of technology to keep me, mentally stimulated. You can build a team, if that's your path. And, so that once I got into that, I did that for that company for a couple of years. And then like anything, and I think a lot of us that have been in any type of leadership role, I wanted to do my thing, right? I wanted to build truly help people without being beholden to a particular company's agenda or bottom line, right? So that they have things that they're trying to accomplish, which, I get it, mission accomplishment, but now it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe that's not the best thing. So now I consult in that space. So I get to work with agencies, no holds barred, help them truly be better, and get them the best thing that I know of based on my background and experience.
That's awesome. So you went from profits, profits, profits at Amazon
Yeah.
to your own thing, real estate, back into, let's call it, doing good for the community. And now you're doing your own thing, but continuing to enable the first responders. Tell us a little bit about what day to day, week to week looks like for you right now, as you are knee deep in
Hmm.
running your own practice.
Sure. So I partnered up with a Marine buddy with a similar background, and so we started this consulting business. But each of us had connections and experience working in the field. So right now it's new. It's less than a year old that we incorporated the company and generating business. But we've again, because of our contacts, had a contract working with the a pretty large fire agency in California, doing a vulnerability assessment, coming in, looking at all their systems to say, hey, here's where you're doing good, here's where we recommend you do make some improvements. And honestly, they were extremely receptive. It was, like I said, it's one of those really rewarding things where you can kind of see the light bulb go on, and they're like, oh, we can do that. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. And see an immediate impact, just things that they didn't know were available. You don't know what you don't know, kind of thing. And so being able to come in with an outside perspective. Another facet of some of that is, these agencies have budgets and they have to report to someone. And if they want to get something new, not just new gear, but just new processes or new facilities or whatever the case may be, they have to present their budget to, a board, for example. Um, Even though they're saying the same thing to the board that someone like me would tell them, hearing it from a third party somehow carries more weight or validates what they were doing. So I've been brought in to, present to a board, sort of validating what they were trying to communicate to the board anyway, to get their funding or something like that. So being able to do stuff like that to help agencies. Software companies, so go to trade shows or conferences where, almost unrelated, let's say it's an HR software platform. As consultants, we're in this space and we can potentially see things that, hey, that's not really our thing, but we know a company that does X, Y, and Z that you might want to reach out to and help with. So we make these partnerships with other, vendors that could potentially help out these agencies that we're working with directly as well. So it's this really cool way to like interact with all sorts of areas of the industry, and like I said, just genuinely help out these folks, because you go in and say, yeah, I mean, you've probably seen this in the Marine Corps where, we just get used to doing things a certain way. It's like, why the heck do we do that? Like, well, because it's been broken, and, Gunny told us to do it this way 7 years ago, and we'll just keep doing it. It's like, well, you can just flip this switch and then do it a different, you just don't know what you don't know. So a lot of times that's what's happening is, these dispatch centers, 911 calls, it's, it can be very chaotic. It's a high stress environment. So when you're trying to navigate through your processes, you want it as simple as possible. Once you get used to it, you don't want to change it. So talk about an organization that's resistant to change. This is one of them. So you're kind of resistant to anything coming into making it different, even if it may be better, because look, I got my process. Don't mess with my, I just want to kind of click through and, do what I'm supposed to do and not be interrupted. So, um, there's those challenges as well. But again, it's been a really rewarding and satisfying way to really do what I enjoy, and staying in touch with that kind of community service aspect that I also genuinely enjoyed in the Marine Corps.
That's amazing. You're making money and you're doing good for the country still. That's great
Yeah.
to that's a win-win for everybody.
Hmm.
What are some of the major shifts or trends that you're seeing in the dispatch industry? I'm sure like new technologies going to greatly enhance or change it. What's talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. The country is honestly in this transition phase right now where, and I'll speak mostly. California is a large part of where, I worked in the past few years, and they had a huge effort to, move to what's called, next generation 911 or next gen 911. Um, so many of our dispatch centers are public safety answering points, PSAPs, are operating on literally 1970s and 80s technology. These copper phone lines are everything is dependent upon that. So you've got, Billy Bob the backhoe driver is digging a trench somewhere for something and cuts the lines. You have no 911. The technology exists where, I mean, we've been in the cloud for 20 years. So there's technology out there where that doesn't matter. It has a negligible, if any, impact at all. So moving these dispatch centers to this next gen 911 is the next move. It's the next technology. Some states have done it, but very few. But as I mentioned, that resistance to change, and then wanting it to be right. I mean, there's literally lives on the line or potentially lives on the line. If that call doesn't come through correctly, then that's an issue. So the call delivery, that core infrastructure, there's several different platforms involved with making sure that 911 call is not just delivered correctly, but it has location information. With the advent of cell phones, again, 25 years ago, that wasn't really an issue. Your address was tied to your phone number. It was a landline, and you had, think caller ID. That's how location was delivered. So you knew where to dispatch, fire, police, or EMS. Now you have cell phones. All that technology, evolves and, requires some level of interaction to make sure that this information is getting communicated to those dispatchers and then subsequently into the field for those services. So moving to that next generation technology is a huge push right now. In fact, my business partner, he teaches how to get there. And, one of the things that we're doing is trying to educate these dispatch centers on, things that they need to do to prepare, because again, it's a big change and there's some reluctance. And honestly, some of the big names in the industry, the big vendors, and ones we've heard, AT&T, Motorola, things like that, they're giants in the field, and they, moving to next gen, honestly, puts them at risk for losing some revenue. So there's some, I'll say corporate resistance, and I'm not blaming or poking eyes at them. I'm just saying that that's some names that folks should recognize. But yeah, so then in addition to the natural reluctance to change, there's some corporate resistance because, like I said, these companies stand to lose revenue moving. So unless they can get on board to be the ones that people want to pay for, they're going to lose revenue. So
Right.
that's been a challenge for sure.
That's overall sounds like a great trend for your consultant
Sure.
path
It is. No,
and
it's been good.
a lot of opportunity for sure. What are some of the key things that you're looking at as you're growing your consultancy? Do you have any like KPIs that you're tracking? What are you like focused on and improving in your business? Like where's your focus?
Um, Honestly, our current focus is just business development. We're ju- you know, knocking down doors, if you will, attending these conferences, making connections, reaching out to our contacts. So our focus is just to business development right now. We are kind of on the back end working on processes. We just hired a guy to help us with our website, make it a little more, user friendly and kind of get the information that needs to be out there. These classes that we're teaching are helping to get into the minds of the dispatchers and the call takers, so that they can talk to their supervisors, and kind of gaining momentum. So um, and it's kind of all over this, right? Business development, just trying to get that get business, but also educating so that we can kind of remove some of those barriers and reluctance from the changes. Um, Unknowingly, some of these things, these efforts that we're doing, have opened some doors internationally as well. So there's several countries don't have 911 or something similar. Maldives, for example, you have to know the number of the police station, the fire station, or the ambulance to get services. There's no one number that you call to get those services. So, kind of foreign and eye-opening for Americans, because it's ubiquitous here, even though there are some places in the country that don't have 911. I don't know if you know that, but that's another thing that I didn't know until I started really getting into the industry. But yeah, so there's countries out there that have nothing. You have to call your fire or police directly. So imagine that you're somewhere, you get a car accident. They don't have that OnStar that's automatically calling 911 for you. They have nothing. You got to hope somebody comes by and calls if you're unconscious or something. It's pretty crazy.
The Maldives definitely sounds like it'd be a good work trip. I hope you
Oh,
can
no.
get out there and set them up.
Not opposed to that at all.
That would be some trip there. So where do you see yourself and your company in 6 to 12 months from now? What's the goal?
The goals start, like I said, getting a business developed so that we're getting into the office spaces of some more agencies. I know this last one we worked with in California, I was telling you about that. They're very pleased, and they're going to be a great referral source for us, because they're going to be able to talk to others. Thankfully they're pleased with our work. They're talking about it to their leaders. They've actually added on some more work for us to do. They were, and we do good work. We're gonna come in and do that work. So getting some more business. The and if this, some of these international things work out, that's got a lot of potential to build something from the ground up, which would be exciting. If not, that's okay too. There's plenty of work in the United States to help agencies kind of get ready for. Really, the focus would be getting them onto the next generation 911 platform.
If you could wave a magic wand and solve your biggest problem, like, what would that be? Just a ton more business, or is there something else?
Um, it would be waving the wand and removing the I call it a fear, but it's really that resistance to change. Because once it's, like I said, when we're communicating with agencies, and we educate them on, where they could be versus where they are, you visibly see the light go on and the countenance in their face change, going, really, we can do that? Yes, absolutely. Now, it's not a snap your fingers and then you can do it, because most agencies are governed either by the state, county, or some local municipality that governs their 911. There's 911 administrators at the county level, at the state level, in many states. So there's a little bureaucracy to move toward in that direction, but there's not a state that doesn't want to do that. They want a better 911 system. So yeah, remove that reluctance, because that's once the folks on the ground, or the folks in the chair with the headset on, are advocating to move to that next generation platform. And it's not just one thing. There's core services, there's call handling systems, there's location information. It's multifaceted, so there's a lot to go on. But if they're advocating for it and they're saying, "Hey, we need this," that generates the momentum that they need, which in turn leads to business for folks like me that can go in and help them prepare and make sure they're not getting, swindled by just some money hungry vendor.
I bet if I polled a bunch of people that question, they'd say the same thing, because nobody wants to change anything, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always the biggest hurdle for any type of business development or project management or whatever. So yeah, that would be a good, if we could get that magic wish, that would be great for society, I think.
Just do it.
So Mark, a ton of exciting stuff that you're doing and like adventurous stuff, starting your own business, your path from Amazon to here. What did your time in the Marines, or were there any things from your Marine Corps service, like habits, principles, anything like that, that have continued to help propel you through this journey?
Um, yeah, it's that I know I talked about it about, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not just because someone's watching, but doing what it takes to make your boss look good and then giving your team the credit, right? Again, I'll reiterate that it sounds selfish on the surface, but the point is, like, if we're working towards our um, larger mission or larger goal, whether that's what your boss wants or what the, stated vision is for the company, you're working to make that better. And then you're just kind of giving your team the credit and everyone's doing that. There's, for me, there's huge satisfaction in seeing your team develop and grow, mentor them to be your replacement kind of thing. So, those were always things I know that for me in the military, both enlisted and as an officer, I'm helping, my guys and gals grow to get to that next promotion or that next school seat or the next, so helping Marines out and helping your, those service members out under your charge grow and develop, it pays dividends. It's, you help them to get what they want. They're happy. They're moving in a direction where they want to be, and in the future they work hard for you as well. So when it's time comes to do something that, a lot of us may not want to do, is like, all right, hey, we're going to be here this weekend now. We gotta step it up. They remember those things. You've helped them in the past, and now they're going to come help you. So I think that's a big one. Um, and then the tough lesson that took me a while to learn, and it's counterintuitive, is, not chasing the money. Really go after what you enjoy doing, whatever that is, and then, find a place where you can do that and actually make a living. If if you only chase the money, you'll find yourself compromising in areas that you probably wouldn't have otherwise, because you're going after that paycheck. It seems nice at first, because I was there. Like, yeah, but nice house, nice cars, all those things that honestly don't matter. And it sounds cliche, but it's true, right? If you're coming home and you're miserable every night, what's the point? The money only covers that for so long, in my opinion. So yeah, helping your folks out, kind of really finding what it is that you like to do, is way more valuable and satisfying than just chasing the paycheck. Paycheck will come.
That's great advice. Is there any other advice you'd like to share, maybe for somebody thinking about getting out or who has recently just gotten out of the military? The paycheck advice is great advice, and I would second that as well.
Yeah, sadly, it's usually those of us who've had to go through it, and it's a hard lesson to learn sometimes, and you think you're doing great. And I think, so the Marine Corps is getting better from what I understand, but that whole transition, for folks getting out, um, you know, tamp and tap or whatever they call it now, just like, hey, here's, make sure you build a LinkedIn page, we'll help you with your resume. Good luck, and honestly, that's just not enough. There's a guy at my church who's Army, special ops, and he was like on an internship for 6 months. So Army was doing something really good. I'm sure the Air Force does it too. They're so corporate, but they put him in a role, basically paid him active duty pay to work for some company for 6 months before he got out. What a great idea, right? I mean, if you've done your time and you've served, that's a program that would be awesome. But advice other than, like I said, try to resist chasing the money. It is a counterintuitive thing, right? Even leadership is somewhat counterintuitive. You're fighting to get to a position so you can tell people what to do. Not at all. The more leadership experience you have and more responsibility, you have more people that are depending on you, that you basically work for. They don't work for you. You're working for them. So it's those counterintuitive um, ideals that we tend to skip over and not chasing the money. Yeah, I don't
Yep.
know what.
That's good. I mean, that's good advice. So, Mark, anything else you want to share? If people want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yeah,
If they're interested in your company, like how would they look you up? Tell us.
yeah. I'm on socials, so LinkedIn, just my name, Mark Davis. Instagram, it's Mark Davis Consulting. Um, Website, again, it's under construction. So navigate911.com. So we help folks navigate the 911 process.
Amazing. Well, Mark, thanks for joining for round two. Appreciate your insights and can't wait for the listeners to hear your story.
And I'm excited for what you're doing. This is great. I hope, like I said, at least one transitioning service member can benefit from it.
Appreciate that and appreciate your time. Thank you to our guest for sharing their journey from the military to corporate leadership. We'll be back soon with more stories of veterans proving that success doesn't end with a uniform. It begins a new mission. This is Military to Management with your host, Eamon.